Greetings, theists and non-theists. I'm the Atheist Paladin. Let me get this out the way first, okay?
This is my beloved son, of whom I am well pleased.
Okay, so the lights that I put in are a little brighter than the ones I had last time I was doing a video. So what I want to talk about today, I want to talk about the burden of proof with Jack, okay? And anybody else who's willing to have this discussion. I believe that we can talk about the notions of lacking a belief all we want. Till we're blue in the face, and then purple, and then black. At the end of the day, I see it as, it's not a point of contention that is worth winning. There isn't anything to be gained by it, and there's nothing really to be lost by it. So, and more to the point, Jack, I don't think anybody cares. So you think the lack of belief is something that is not proper in its use of language, and you don't think it conveys anything. Oh well, it's still going to happen. So what we need to do here in this conversation, and I think that would be more productive, is that we have a discussion about the burden of proof. And I think if the burden of proof is properly understood between atheists and theists, and between me and you, and between everybody else, I think that the discussion from then out, if everybody understands their part in the burden of proof, I think the discussions have a better flow to them. There is an expectation and a sort of knowledge of, okay, what to expect, what is reasonable, and what to do next, basically, in a discussion. So when we're referring to the burden of proof, we're not, of course, referring to anything that exists, but while we're rather referring to something that should vary at least between two rational people that want to have a discussion, a common set of values. At the core of what the burden of proof is, it's simply a heuristic. It's simply a reasonable ontological parsimony that just weeds out all the bullcrap that can happen in philosophy and discussions in general. If we have a common set of values and establish this sort of burden of proof, I think that it's just fertile soil to go for, right? Because let's take an example when the burden of proof is not respected. Okay, let's take Shock of God's little challenge to atheists that, please provide proof of evidence that atheism is accurate and correct. I mean, it totally assumes something that's not there. There isn't anything to be had. It falsely assumes what atheism is. It's simply, at the very simple means, as an opposition to theism. I don't believe in your proposition of a God. And so saying, well, this isn't a position that is forwarded, it's simply ridiculous, right? And so when everybody tried to meet his little challenge, he had no respect to the burden of proof. That's the whole point of the question. It disrespects it, right? And so when when something was put in challenge in opposition to his question, he just laughed it off. And what was had from this discussion? Nothing. Nothing was to be gained from it. Nothing came of this discussion. Nothing at all. And so when we have a proper position of a burden of proof, and when we put forward these things, the discussion, we know what will happen. So we need a discussion, what values that we need to have in this discussion, right? And I think having a discussion that's rational and not just in the arguments it puts forth, but in the manner that the arguments happen, in the expectations, right? Because if I come to you with this absurd idea that chimeras exist, and you don't believe that, and I'll go, oh yeah? Well, prove that they don't exist. I'm putting a burden upon you that it's not reasonable, because I am now asking you to do something that I myself is not doing. I'm not doing anything when I do that, right? There is nothing to be had in that discussion. You can reasonably, laugh at me and walk away from that discussion. And, theists need to understand this too. If they wish to communicate and have a productive discussion with atheists, this burden of proof has to happen. It has to be there in the discussion and followed. So when we're discussing about burden of proof, we're discussing about people rationally taught. We're talking about reality, right? And so I forward a claim in reality. More that claim affects reality, and more that it goes against a sort of common knowledge, the more that claim it holds a burden of proof. And rationally, anybody can take a position that they can take a position that that the claims or the evidence that forwards this claim are insufficient, and that's a proper burden of proof on the person who stands against it, and it's completely reasonable. Gosh dang it! Okay, before I was rudely interrupted by the phone, it is something that's completely rational. So when you're presenting something, Jack, when you're presenting that God exists, please think about the position that we're in, and think about what expectation is reasonable for us. I don't want you to do all sorts of things that prove that God exists, Jack. I just want something that is reasonable and rational, and we'll discuss it from there, and we'll see where that takes us, right? But if you don't have a reasonable expectation on us, and we don't have any reasonable expectation on you, the discussion, we'll be just talking across each other, and we'll never end up communicating. And I think that's what the burden of proof is. I think if it's understood and respected, and we understand the roles that we play in this, I think that provides the best grounds for communication. It provides the best means of converting atheists. It provides the best means of making theists understand the null. All right, the position that is in opposition. And I think if we can do this, then I think there's something we can add. So I'd like to hear your thoughts, Jack. What values should we have in this discussion? And that's something that we should and can agree on. What would be reasonable? And if I think we can lay this groundwork, well, I think there's a lot of potential. And I think if we can do this, then this lays out for the future of all other discussions. And if we don't do this, there's nothing productive, and there's nothing to be had. So, peace, take care, and remember, rationality is the path to righteousness.